This man was the Leonardo DiCaprio of the 1940s. Daniel Cross was America's most famous young Hollywood star, with screaming fans outside every theater and photographers following him everywhere. But behind his perfect smile was a secret so disturbing that years later investigators would connect his name to people who mysteriously vanished. Daniel's career exploded in 1942 after his first major film became one of the biggest movies of the decade. He was handsome, charming, and seemingly impossible to dislike. But people close to him noticed something strange. Daniel kept a small black notebook with him everywhere, and he never allowed anyone to read it. Then one of his co-stars disappeared. She was supposed to meet Daniel at a restaurant after filming, but she never arrived. Police searched her home, her car, and the surrounding area. There was no evidence of foul play. Then investigators discovered something strange inside Daniel's notebook. Her name was already written there. Beside her name was a date, the exact date she disappeared. Daniel claimed he had written the name months earlier because he was planning a new movie character. Police had no reason to arrest him, and without evidence, the investigation went nowhere. But then Daniel wrote another name. 3 weeks later, another person vanished. This time it was a famous photographer who had recently taken several pictures of Daniel. His camera was discovered beside an empty road, still containing the final photographs he had taken. The last photograph showed Daniel standing outside his studio, but in the background was something nobody could explain: a woman who had already been reported missing. Police returned to Daniel's notebook. There were now 17 names inside it. Some belonged to people who had disappeared, others belonged to people who were still alive, and next to every name was a different date. Investigators quietly began following the people whose names had not yet become missing person cases. Then they noticed something terrifying. Every person on Daniel's list had crossed paths with him at some point during the previous year. But Daniel insisted he barely remembered most of them. When detectives asked him where the names came from, he simply smiled and said, "I don't choose the names." Police searched Daniel's Hollywood mansion that night. Inside a locked room, they found hundreds of old photographs arranged across an entire wall. Each photograph had a person's name written underneath it, but there was one empty space at the very end, and beneath it was a date that hadn't happened yet. The police placed Daniel under surveillance. For several days, nothing happened. Then, shortly before midnight, Daniel left his house carrying the black notebook. Officers followed him to an abandoned movie theater on the outskirts of Los Angeles. Inside, they found an old film projector already running, but nobody was operating it. On the screen was footage of Daniel standing inside the same theater. The footage appeared to have been recorded decades earlier. Then the camera slowly moved toward the empty seats. One seat was occupied. It was the seat where Daniel was standing right now. The officers turned around. Daniel was gone. His notebook was still sitting on the theater floor. The investigators opened it to the final page. There was only one name: Daniel Cross, and underneath it was a date from the following morning. When police returned to his mansion the next day, Daniel's entire house was empty. But inside the locked room, they found one new photograph pinned to the wall. It showed the detectives who had investigated him, and written underneath the photograph were 4 words: "You're next in line."